Hello, this is Steve, your YouTube English teacher, with this week's video in which we are focusing on writing reviews for B2 and C1. We're going to look at common questions, how you answer them, with a bit of use of English and speaking thrown in for an added bonus. Let's get into it. So we start with a question like this. The review will normally look something like this. We're starting with a really common one, a book review. You all did this in school, well now you have to do it for this exam. They're not just going to say write a review of a book, they're going to change the question slightly so you have to pay attention to the question, give your writing a certain focus. In this case, we want a review of a book that hooks the reader in with an unusual premise. Of course, really any book has an unusual premise. Like any book you could say, oh, that's unusual. So really you can still write about almost any book, but try and give it that focus of what makes it different, what makes it special, what makes it unusual. You need to include that, as well as not including any spoilers and the relevant general information, the basic information like you would find in a real review. You wouldn't read a review of a book that never told you its name or that never told you the name of the author. All of this would be in the review, wouldn't it? So make it real and you'll get a higher mark. So let's write our little plan here. How do we answer a question like this? Well, we're going to start with a title. If you are reading a book review on a website, normally has a title because you don't just start reading in the middle of a review or an essay. No, it's got a title to tell us what we're reading about. In my case, not your typical romantic comedy. I'm already addressing the question a bit. It's not a typical one. It's unusual. And I'm also giving information about the book because we can maybe guess the fact that it's in italics. This is the title of the book. Quite a famous book by Curtis Sittenfeld. And in my introduction, I'm going to give the basic info about the book, the basic premise, the story, the idea, which is that there is a female comedy writer who is not hot in her words, more normal looking. But then she starts dating a really rich, famous singer. So it's playing with this idea of gender roles and stereotypes, and it's really interesting. You can see that in my introduction, I'm saying what I'm going to be reviewing, this gripping novel. I'm giving my opinion a little bit, so it's going to be clear from now on. And I'm trying to make it interesting. I'm setting you up with this rhetorical question. You read this and you think, oh, that is interesting. Yeah, that's true. I wonder what this book and this review has got to say about it. Well, here's what we've got to say about it. Our first paragraph, we're going to talk about the characters, because this is one important element of the book. Sally, the comedy writer, and Noah, the love interest, the hot, rich, famous singer. They meet. There's a spark, but can it work? Oh, intriguing. You want to read it, and I'm telling you what it's about in a clear and interesting way. The other thing I really liked about this book was the setting. It's set mostly in a fictional TV show called Night Owls, which is like Saturday Night Live, the famous American sketch show. And the atmosphere, they just really captured this atmosphere of working on an American sketch show that I found really interesting. And oh, what's that? There's a blank there. This is my third video in the part 2 B2-C1 writing. So we're doing use of English part 3. You need to take the word fun and you need to transform it so it fits this gap. The root is fun, transform that word. Of course, they are trying to write the funniest jokes possible because funny means haha. We are talking about comedy, comic, laughing, funny, not fun, which means having a good time, but funny. Then we know the difference by the time we get to C1, don't we? And then in my conclusion, my conclusion is summing up my opinion of it. I'm not normally a fan of romance, but this, wow, I honestly couldn't sleep while I was reading this because I wanted to know, will Sally and Noah get together? The twists, the turns, really, really good. It does also help if you know a bit about US comedy shows because you'll appreciate the atmosphere more. But just that feeling of, I want to know what's happening, it was great. So as you can see in my conclusion, I'm recommending the book. Maybe don't just say, I recommend this book for everyone, because not everyone's going to like every book. You have to be a bit more careful with what you say. That shows that you're thinking about the audience, about the message you want to transmit. It means you are writing something better. So there we go. That's a very complete plan. Well, if you've got this plan, then as I always say, you've already done half the battle. You've already done most of the work. You can now write a fantastic book review. Once we've done that, oh, I should have said, shouldn't I? I forgot I did something else. In each of these little plans, because we're doing use of English part 3, I'm also going to ask you, as you read, to think, What other words here could be in use of English part 3? So fun, funniest, familiar, familiarity. When you're reading, something I've said in my videos before, C1 mindset, like Cambridge mindset, thinking of use of English part 3, thinking of word transformations, trying to extract and learn everything you can from these incredible classes that I'm giving you. So that's the other option we'd have for use of English part 3. There might even be more there, but that one's a very possible C1 question, familiarity. What do you think? Do you want to read this book based on what I've said? Do you like romance books? Do you like comedy books? Do you like American comedy? All these things that I mention far too often, podcasts and series and things that are important for our culture and our language. After each little question, we do a bit of speaking. But let's get on with this, or else this video is going to be far too long. Our second question is a film review. Your local film club, that should say film, is doing an event about movies that mix genres. So you need to write a review of a film that includes elements from different genres. Again, if you think about it, almost every film you could say, well, it's part thriller and part gangster. It's part Western and part drama. Almost any film can fit this. They are letting you write a lot of different things, but with a particular focus. Here's how I did this. My title is going to be The Perfect Mix of Action and Comedy? ? Again, hopefully making you want to read it and saying clearly what I'm going to write about. Maybe you can guess already. What's the best action comedy film? For me, it is a superhero movie. It's Deadpool. And in my introduction, I'm going to explain why I think this fits this and why I like it and so on. So I'm going to mention superhero movies, which are silly kids movies. And then they should also be a comedy. And then I give the basic info about Deadpool, about how it's a superhero with healing powers. And then we can also talk about the comedy as well. And the answer here, that superhero movies are essentially kids movies. Why didn't that come up? They are essentially kids movies. In my first paragraph, I talk about how it's an action film. And then in my second paragraph, I talk about how it's a comedy film. And I'm focusing on the different elements. And then in my conclusion, again, a recommendation for people with a mature sense of humor, or even, well, I guess that's the wrong thing to say. For adults with an immature sense of humor, maybe is more appropriate, but you get the idea. And again, we could have found popularity. Next time, I'm going to remember to ask you before clicking that. What do you think? Top 3 genres, and can you think of films that would mix them? I'm really interested to hear. Leave it in the comments. Our third question is about series. I don't see enough of these on Cambridge exams. There should be more questions reviewing series because this is what everyone watches nowadays. So I think it's very possible that this will be on the exam. You have to write a review of a series and why it's so popular. Pretty clear, right? I'm going to write about Severance. Great series, isn't it? Everyone should be watching Severance, which has created an weird world based on the innies and their office jobs. And you're asking yourself these questions, and I'm making clear points about the series, making it interesting, talking about the different elements of a series. For example, like we saw before, the setting, the characters, the plot, all the different elements with a title, with an introduction, with a conclusion. Hopefully you're getting the idea by now, but we're going to keep practicing our use of English and speaking. Talking of use of English, what goes in that gap? Of course, we need an adverb because we're saying how weird is it? It is intriguingly weird, slightly irregular in that we have to remove the E, because if it's intriguing, it would be too weird with that many vowels. Can you find any more words for use of English part 3? There's loads, aren't there? Mysterious, seemingly from seem, pointless from point, even personality from person. Lots of options there. Do you try to keep up with the must-watch series? Which would you choose for a series that everyone is talking about this year? I mean, there's enough options, aren't there? Question number 4, a music review. You see, we're covering all of our bases here. So you attended a concert and you need to include details of the artists and the audience reaction. This time it's on a forum, but it's still the same review, title, introduction, and so on. My review, of course, is about Half Man, Half Biscuit, a band I've mentioned in videos on my channel before. And we've got a bit of a tough C1 use of English part 3 question here. Where do they play their gigs, their concerts? They play them in picturesque villages. From picturesque meaning like it should be in a picture, in a painting, in a postcard, and so on. Can you find another nice C1 word there? I think there's one really nice one, and that is loyalty. Maybe you could have said carefully from care, but loyalty is a nice one just because it's slightly irregular, isn't it? Loyalty. What's your dream concert? Obviously, you can just make it up for these kind of questions, and you can talk about the time you went to see Beyonce in Los Angeles, even though you've never left your basement in Europe. So yeah, you can say whatever you want, and that's what makes it fun. Right, we're halfway there. This is the last media review we're doing, and it's about YouTube. We're on YouTube. Let's talk about YouTube. You are writing a review of a YouTube channel, focusing on that feeling community that we all have, that you and me have between us. And you could win a YouTube plaque, not one that you just buy on the internet for €5, but a real one. I am talking about Eugenio Monesma, who makes really interesting documentaries that I use to practice my Spanish. And they provide viewers with a of how their grandparents lived. They give you a reminder. So again, I'm talking about why the viewers are interested in it, because I mention the viewers and I make a clear point answering the question. Then I do everything else that we need to do as well. Another word here that could fit, maybe documentaries, documentaries, having to think about plurals a little bit. Do you have any connections to any YouTubers like this where you think, yes, I am part of the gang? I have that nice feeling with them. That's a nice feeling to have. Well, let's keep going. We are onto something slightly different. We're now going to do more like the hospitality service reviews, starting with a restaurant review, which is about a restaurant that has just opened in your town. Does it live up to the hype? So again, you're reviewing a restaurant with a slightly specific focus to make sure you've understood the question and you can answer that question. Here's what I would say. We just got Popeyes. I live in Spain, and Popeyes just started opening up around here in the last couple of years, and I'm happy with it. What would you compare it to? You compare it to KFC. A natural comparison can be made to KFC, and the new arrival comes out very favorably. The chicken, the chips, and oh my god, their milkshake. You know, McDonald's in Spain doesn't have milkshake. They don't do that. So finally, when Popeyes arrived with their pistachio, chocolate, Oreo milkshakes, it's worth going to Popeyes. So there we go. Lots of nice details in the review to make it interesting, to bring it to life, to make the person want to read it, to transmit that message. After our restaurant, well, where would you like to go? Would you like a restaurant near you? Tell me about it. Express yourself and so on. And now we are going to a hotel. Again, a slightly different focus. We are thinking about a hotel that has been renovated, trying to think about the change. So you can't just say, I like this hotel because, and then memorize everything that you've already done in a review. No, there's a slightly different twist on it. Like always, you have to think, answer the question clearly, before, after, and you could be going to Prague. My point was that there's obviously been a big change in the common areas and the facilities. Then in the second paragraph, I might talk about the rooms or, the restaurant or something in the hotel, but something relevant to the hotel. What has happened with the change? The lobby has been, what's the verb of modern? Modernize. So past participle, modernized with an S or with a Z or with a Z. And we could also maybe say previously would be another use of English part 3 option. What's the fanciest hotel you've stayed at? Tell me about it. I'm interested to hear. Right, our last service question that we are reviewing is a cruise ship. This one I do think would be interesting. I've never been on a cruise, but I would be interested in going on one if it wasn't so crazy expensive. But you are reviewing a cruise, thinking about, and here I've given you what you need to talk about, so you need to be a bit careful. You can't just spend the whole time talking about how you went swimming in the sea, because that's not really answering the question. What are the facilities, the entertainment, the food? And then if you write a good one, well, I haven't mentioned this, have I? But they will normally say something like, the best reviews will be published and win. The point there is you are supposed to be writing a good review. Like, you are not just saying on TripAdvisor, I'm just going to give it 5 stars and say it was great, thanks. That's a good review. But no, you have to make an effort to write a good one. That's why they say that. And you might say something like this, talking about the facilities. An enormous pool with water slides, a gym, which makes your workouts, a library, a cinema, very interesting. Of course, your workouts with ocean views, you would never forget them for the rest of your life. They were unforgettable. And what was unforgettable? My workouts. Use of English part 3 again. Always thinking, always looking for more. Would you like to go on a cruise? Where? What would be on the ship? Lots of different types of swimming pool. It would be very fun. Right, our penultimate question. We are moving on to product review. This is another possibility for B2 and C1. Common product that everyone should be able to write about is a mobile phone. You know, over 10% of the world now has a mobile phone. That is a true statistic, over 10% now. So most people know about them and should be able to write about them. Here you are reviewing a mid-range mobile phone, talking about the performance for different things. And you might win a phone case. So again, write a good one. And you might be saying things like, with 8 gigabytes of RAM, the Secotec AS54 can handle intense social media use, having lots of tabs open like video editing, etc. With, what's the phrase here, from easy, it can handle it with ease. That's the noun from easy. Sometimes you have to make a noun. And then we mention the other points of the question. There's a very obvious word here for use of English part 3, isn't there? Doubt, undoubtedly, is good value for money. And then my second paragraph, I can talk about taking photos and the 20, 50, 100 megabit pixel camera and so on. And I can sound like I know what I'm talking about and write a good review. What do you think? How often do you upgrade your phone? Why am I obsessed with mid-range phones? We're always obsessed with mid-range, aren't we? But, you know, 200 euros, 250? I don't know. I guess it depends on the year when we are talking about this as well. Final question then. I'm trying to do some a little bit more left field, a little bit more unusual, because you should be prepared to write about a wide range of topics at B2 and C1. So here you are writing a review of a kitchen device. The point being something that you actually use, not one that goes to the back of the cupboard because your mother-in-law gave it to you, but you never actually use it. What have I got like this? I've got a waffle maker, a sushi maker, an orange juice maker that unfortunately I don't use as much as I should. But if you write a good review, you're going to win a tiny smoothie maker. So think about something that makes sense to review and then make some nice clear points about it in an interesting way. In my case, I am talking about my microwave egg cooker, which is actually useful and I do use a lot because cooking eggs is messy, isn't it? You need a pan, you need oil, then you're messing around with the shell if you've hard boiled them. Now, all of that is gone. Drop the raw eggs, pop them in the microwave, and if you like them hard, 1 minute 30. If you like them soft, 50 seconds, and so on and so on. You can make adjustments, of course, adjustments. Or maybe going back to something a bit more basic, helpful. And you, how do you like your eggs? Have I tempted you to buy a microwave egg cooker, this great invention? Hopefully a good review will do that. Right, you can guess where this is going for your final task. We have looked at 10 common reviews. Your homework is to generate a random number using Google or some other website, and then write that review. And then again and again and again, practicing different writing types until you're perfect at it. Hope that was useful. Goodbye.